Hi there. Last week I caught up with Tiago Pedras, the co-founder of the New Digital School, a school focused on design that's based in Portugal. This year-long program is driven by a simple premise. Experience and experiences are more valuable to employers than grades and degrees are. Tiago has built this program from the ground up using that and many more ideas that really challenge some of the basic assumptions we have about the way education and educational experiences should happen. I had a ton of fun chatting with him. I hope that you enjoy our conversation. Tiago, tell me about your background. What led you to the New Digital School?
So my background is actually in multimedia design. So it's a very, very broad background in a way that I learned many things from video, 3D, motion design, animation. Not so much about web design, which is what I ended up doing. And so maybe because of that, my degree at the time was being put together. It was still fairly new. And so I was invited to become a teacher as I entered the last year of the course. And so it was a weird experience because I ended up being a teacher and the student at the same time during that last year. So it was very complex, complicated, interesting at the same time. And so I've been teaching since then. The course the curriculum wanted to cover web as well. And so I was self-taught in web design. I learned on my own at home, building websites for myself, for friends, that sort of stuff. And so I immediately engaged in the task of becoming a teacher, mostly because my father and my mother had been teachers for quite a long time, and so it ran in the family, kind of felt natural. But it wasn't as easy as I thought. So I immediately started buying books and reading them and trying to sort of formalize my knowledge, making it official. But I knew how things work. I just didn't know the reasons behind some of them. And I quickly understood after a few, maybe, 4 years, that it's not easy to get someone to that level of I know what I'm doing and I'm loving it. It's like super difficult. It's kind of easy to explain the basics of things around web development, for instance, or web design. But getting people involved and engaged, it's like super hard. So after a little bit, I decided. Actually, I met a teacher during an exchange program in Austria, and she was teaching game design, and she was also using gamification in her classes in a way that they had an award at the end, first and foremost, and she called it the Golden Pineapple Award. So she literally got out and bought a pineapple and a golden spray paint, and she painted the pineapple. And she had this ceremony at the end where the students had to present their projects of games built according to the industry standards, because I got to understand that there's like this template that you need to fill if you want to present a game idea to a publisher. And the idea was, okay, let's make this interesting. Let's put together teams and not just groups of people. Let's delegate a team leader for each team. Let's have a name of the team and a flag. And so all of this created this notion of competition and of sort of like a real world environment that they had to use. And I loved it because I was at a point where I knew that I only had the students for 1 year. Later on, I had them for 2 years, but still, they needed to know so many things to become professionals that I knew that I was failing them. I knew that since I was a little bit in advance compared to them, I knew that, yeah, but you also need to know this, and you also need to know this, and you're still learning the basics, so you need to catch up. It's like super, super complicated. And it's even more difficult if they're not like super engaged and and passionate about what they're doing. And so this idea, I asked Maya if I could import the idea, and she said, sure, but I've trademarked the golden pineapple, so you'll need to come up with your own name. And I did. I called it the Golden Coconut Award. And so every year, at the end of the year, I have currently 5 exercises, 5 projects that they go through, and the 5th is the Golden Coconut. And so it's a longer project. And in the first 4, they go through the basics, what I consider like the very, very short entry-level basics of web. And very quickly, I try to get them aware of these very important notions of what is good design, what is good user experience, what is good development, and why do I need to have semantic code on my HTML to make it work. And after that, the final one brings real-world constraints, budgets, clients, users, problems, business side of things. It's like it's what makes things worse, right? Who wouldn't want to just design for a living and not having to care about paying the bills or about the clients liking it or the users liking it or something crashing in between? But everyone needs to care about that. And so I thought this has to be part of their training. It just has to be. And so this exercise is always about pushing the boundaries. It's always about introducing something else and something else. And so when they think they've got this far and they think they're really good at what they've done, I push them back and I say, no, because there's a lot more that you need to accommodate. Have you tested it? Have you shown someone? Have you realized that maybe in a smartphone your fingers are too fat to press that? So that sort of stuff. And so I've been doing this, the coconut, for I think it's at least 6 or 7 years, I'm not sure, maybe 6. And I've been teaching for 10. But all of a sudden, I also realized that, this is just one class in between an entire curriculum of, I don't know, maybe 9 classes that they have every year. And so it just wasn't enough. And so maybe 2 years ago, I came up with this idea of how can I take this performance issue of making them learn fast and learn passionately to the next level. And so I was talking to Chris Murphy, who teaches at Belfast School of Arts. And we were discussing, okay, what if we all together as a community of web design teachers put together this, open source place, repository of exercises. And we say that, when you want to teach this exercise works really well. And if you do this, this, and this, in a very short amount of time, you can do it. But things started progressing, and there were so many questions, and there were so many walls around us that we kept hitting, that we started saying, okay, what if we build a curriculum? What if we remove something from the equation? What if we build a school from scratch? And so that was the starting premise. And I usually say that maybe it was the Guinness talking, because we were talking at a pub in Belfast after a conference. I don't know, but I don't think it was. And so we very quickly put together this idea that for people to become really good professionals, they need to be in touch with mentors. They need to be in touch with someone else that knows the trade and the craft. And they need to be in a job placement at a certain point. They need to be in touch with all of the constraints that it's impossible to find them in a laboratory that is a school. And so the idea of the new digital school was put together after that, during a very long period of back and forth, with several people along the way that helped me, that in the meantime had to set themselves apart from the project. But last year, in the beginning of last year, we decided, okay, let's move this forward. Let's do it right, do a logo, build a website, put together all these ideas. And once again, the same thing happened to me that happens to my students. after I thought that I was, okay, now I'm really prepared and I know exactly what I want to do, I'm at this point, I quickly realized that I wasn't, because people started asking me questions and how does it work, how does it not. And so it's an ongoing thing, the framework, the structure, the how it works part. But essentially, we describe this as a school that has no teachers, no fixed curriculum, and no assessment, because we think there's no longer the need to have teachers, because for you to learn all of these hard skills that make you a good professional, especially in the design and the tech industry, all you need to do is just go online, watch a few videos, a few tutorials, and you're good to go. It's the soft skills that are really difficult to learn. So it's not always up to a teacher to try to teach that needs to teach everyone the same, because it's just one person teaching everyone the same. To teach you all of these soft skills inside a classroom, it's usually a lot easier when you do it, hands-on. And so there's no longer this need to have a standardized teaching system where it's one talking to many. Maybe it doesn't have to be like that. Maybe it needs to be everyone engaged, everyone talking, and more than just one mentor. There's no need for a curriculum, because how can you ask people to be creative? And I get this question from clients. I also have an agency. You're the creatives, you should know better. So why don't you come up with a creative solution? And so how can you ask people to be creative when their training was exactly the same as everyone else? So that's super, super frustrating. And there's also no need to evaluate people. Everyone needs a pat on the back. I always say that. Everyone needs to know that they're doing the right thing. But I think validation comes in many forms, and it doesn't have to come in a letter or a number at the end of the year. I don't think there's a need to compare people as well, honestly, because I think everyone has specific traits and backgrounds that are different, that make you special. Maybe it's your hobbies that make you special. And so there's always going to be something in your life that's going to motivate you to work. Yes, it might be inside the tech industry, but you might go into the fintech or the medtech or something else. So there's still something that is going to drive you. And I've always said that people I've met that have changed their careers in the middle, that completely did a pivot, are usually very good professionals. Maybe because they work harder, maybe because they bring this background. And so we basically decided to remove all of these three. What we've put together is something that has sort of a spinal cord that is composed out of 10 master classes. It's kind of like the core. But I've also started, let me see if I have this draft here. We've also started working on sort of a framework that tries to avoid exactly the same thing as everyone else is doing. So if you have this timeline, this one axis thing that takes you from point A to point B, in our case, it would be the school year starts in January and ends in November. Supposedly, everyone at the end would have the same kind of training if you just go through all of these steps. In our case, it is the master classes. It could be something else. What we want to do is something different. We want to have vertical axis as well, because yes, everyone will start here, but at the end you might end here or here or here or there, and it's going to be divergent. So this framework, let me see if I can show it to you. This framework here is exactly that. So what we're trying to do is people will start here, and up until the middle, everyone is more or less around the same area, but we want people to choose a path. And the path might be something as clear as these, but it might also be something as weird as this one here in the middle, where you start in a place, you decide to go this way, then you go back. And so all of these at the end are a list of job roles we put together that we think people might have at the end. And so instead of just having those dots in the main line, we'll also have besides the master classes, we'll add workshops and webinars and other kinds of mentoring training more up, in the upper direction or the towards the bottom, depending on what the students need. And so we call this the Student-Centered Learning Framework. It's a really bad name. We need to come up with something different. But up until now, it's been working really well. And so we're in month 3 or 4. It's about to be the 4th month of classes. It's like there's no limit. The sky is the limit.
Wow, there's so many ideas there I want to unpack. Let me start first with you. So when you first come up with this idea and you want to import this kind of model, and you know you're going to make a new golden fruit and bring it to back to Portugal, you mentioned you run into a bunch of walls, and as kind of the layers of complexity add up, you know, it gets more and more intimidating. I feel like that's a lot of where people stop and get scared and just go the other direction back to what feels safe and comfortable. What do you think allowed you to kind of continue on and keep pushing the project forward?
What allowed me to continue? I think it was this. I used to say that I had this need for perfection that was in me, but I think mostly, and if not just in that bit of time, but also in the longer period that brought me here, I think it was also this notion of frustration that somehow maybe I wasn't doing my job right. Maybe I was to blame for not having students that were as passionate about the web as I was, because I hadn't had a teacher. I was just put in touch with the web on itself when my dad bought a modem for our computer, and I just started sneaking out in the evenings, going online and paying a fortune on a dial-up. And so I was certainly to blame for that. Maybe there was something that I wasn't doing because it was super fun. I would find acceptable if, I don't know, maybe 1 out of 10 or out of 20 didn't like it. But sometimes, and most of the times, what happens is that this is an optional thematic in between lots of themes that you can choose at college. So not everyone is into technology. Not everyone is into this sort of thing. And so what happens is that I might have 2 or 3 really brilliant students. I might have a group of, I don't know, maybe 10 average to good students, and the rest I can't really tell. And so at this point, I'm like, yeah, I know for a fact that if these guys, and there's like at the time, 10 years ago, the market was slightly different, and there were just so many opportunities in web that you literally could not turn your head around and not face it. And so I knew for a fact, if you continue down the path of traditional design, you're going to end up unemployed. It's not going to work. Either you're really good or you have this opportunity. And so I think it was more about frustration, you know. It was more about hitting the walls, but not sticking to the status quo, you know, just not giving up. Because I understood that there was a deeper level to what being a web designer was. And today there's no such thing as a web designer anymore, because there's like these sub-professions inside the area. But I think it was about that.
Cool. So you talk about how it's kind of tough to have that, to kind of imbue web design or education as a whole with people loving it or being in love with it. What do you think makes it tough to have that loving component? Is it that we don't have enough golden coconuts and pineapples in education, or is there something else at play?
I think there's a broader problem here, is that most of the times you're not teaching people you're not teaching on the basis of, yes, there is something out there that you might love. Maybe there isn't. Maybe people just like, you know, slacking off and staying in the sun all day. That's what motivates them. But even then, maybe there's a job for them. I think our education most of the times is based on just getting through it, you know, just going through the process. Why? Because you have to. Yes, there is a few choices in the process that you make that might guide you towards something that you like. Maybe it's arts, maybe it's finances, maybe it's science, but it's not enough. And I think most of the times people just go through it without taking any pleasure out of it. So there's never passion. Most of the times it's about pleasing the teacher. It's about getting a good grade, whatever that means. I know a girl that was super good at what she did. She was studying, I think it was biology or something like that. She was really, really good at what she did. And she ended her grade with her bachelor with really good grades. And then she decided that she didn't want to work in the industry. It wasn't what she wanted to do, but she was really good at it because she studied hard and she had really good memory, and they have to memorize lots of things. So I don't think that if you have good grades, it's because you're good at it. I think that's, pardon me the expression, but that's bullshit, complete bullshit. I don't think that works. And so that's one of the reasons why I think that it's really important to have some kind of a level of passion, of love for what you do, because you can be so many things, particularly the kind of trade that you can do with a computer and an internet connection, which is most of the most recent jobs these days. I think there has to be this sense of love for what you do, because the power is like immense. You can do good, you can do bad. So there has to be love.
Do you think that we can apply the framework of the new digital school, kind of this new access vertical, also kind of moving from less of a laboratory environment to more of a experiential, real world environment, to education in the broader context, not necessarily just web design?
I'm not sure yet if you can do it in such a broader way. I am sure that you can do it in most of the career choices in higher education. I'm pretty sure you can. Maybe not in some. I think some, like maybe law and medicine, are so delicate that it's going to take a very, very long time. I usually say that even doctors and lawyers need to be creative. If you think of the Dr. House kind of doctor, yes, you need to be inventive to find out maybe the why, what's the cause of the symptoms, or what's the cure for the symptoms, that sort of thing. But I think, and I know for a fact, that there's lots of programs out there, particularly in higher education, that are vocation oriented, and that try to do it in a different way. We did spoke with a few before opening the new digital school, and even today, Sarah, who is my partner in crime, just sent me a new video and said, forget about the others, this is what we're doing, and there's someone else doing it exactly the way we do it. And I haven't checked the video, but supposedly it's good. And so it's possible to adapt it. And what's even more interesting is that even in a very small country such as Portugal, that has, 10, 11 million people, I found out that there's a group in Facebook of alternative schools, and most of them are oriented to small kids, like preschool and the first years of school. And they offer some very alternative ways of getting kids on board of the system, and some parents decide that after a few years they still have to go through the traditional system and they have to migrate. But usually what they say is that kids become smarter and more independent and more conscious and critical, that sort of thing. I think these days are really, really important. In an age of misinformation and false news, I think it's super important to be critical.
Sure. Yeah, that's definitely something that we need more of, probably in the United States right now. All right, a couple quick questions, and then I'll let you get back to your day. What does the new digital school look like in 5 years? Like, what's your vision for how this beast evolves?
Tough question. The business plan talks about moving abroad and having the new digital school in other places. It talks about growth in terms of scale, but I think most importantly for me is the growth in terms of being more mature and being sure of what works and what not. The same set of skills that we're providing our students and the same methodologies we're putting forward to them in terms of how do you assess your audience, how do you work on a project, how do you plan, how do you do all of these things, we're putting it to use as well in our project. And so we're still moving things and fixing things as we go, because this is the first year. It's we were this close to not going forward with it because we didn't have the minimum number of students that the business model required. But I said, no, I'm going to make a larger investment. I think we should go, because if we don't make proof of what we can do, it's going to be even tougher next year. So in 5 years, I think we'll probably have a much more interesting view of how these things work. But mostly, I hope, we'll have a lot more recognition for what we're doing here, which I don't think it's scientific. I never intended it to be like that. My background are these 10 years and everything I've read, and I haven't done a single thesis on how it's supposed to be, in terms of education, in terms of the psychological side of things. And Sarah has a very broad background as well, and her latest experience was going through Hyper Island in Manchester. And so it was super interesting for me to have someone on board that had went through a very alternative process herself. And so I think it's going to be mostly that. I'm pretty sure that we're going to grow. We have to. I'm not sure where we're going to be. I'm not even sure if we're still going to be based or centralized here in Portugal, to be honest. Because I think what we're putting together in terms of, of this lineup of people that we're bringing together for these master classes, they are, world-renowned professionals from the top companies in the world. So we saved we saved nothing to bring the top people that we wanted. And so maybe this is such a world valuable kind of thing. It's worthwhile for everyone to join. And so even while we were pricing the program, we knew, look, I don't know, but I think most Americans that pay $50K or $100K for their education to become a professional will probably see no problem in, first of all, paying a much shorter tuition and then coming to a country that is always sunny, has amazing food and amazing people for a year. And so that was the initial premise. I don't know, maybe in 5 years we'll be closer to them without the good food and the nice people in Portugal, but with honest alternatives, I'm pretty sure, with good alternatives.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think you should keep the food and the nice weather as long as you can. Those are major attractions about Portugal. So how can people who watch you in this video help? How can they get involved? Is it just about spreading the story, or is there anything else that they can do to help you?
To be completely honest, it wasn't very difficult for me to convince the people I spoke to that this was a good thing. And if we didn't have enough students, it was a little bit because, it was still our fault. We were a little bit naive in thinking that people could get visas and change countries in such a short amount of time. But mostly, our main problem is spreading the word, because it's a vast world. There's a lot of competition already. Might not seem like it, but mostly because it's a very complex message to transmit. If you're not face-to-face someone, if you're not sitting down like we are for 20, 30 minutes, and you get to explain why you do it, how does it work, and get into all of the little details. So I think it's mostly about, yes, do talk to us, do come to us, and engage with us in any way you want to, because first of all, we're looking for people to contribute, to give webinars that we will very gladly distribute, and to give us their opinion, to tell us their story, to join as a student if they want to come and teach if they want to, but it's mostly about talking about the subject, talking about what can we do. It's not just on the student side, it's also on the company side. So we're looking for partners and finding the right partners, the kind of companies that have this cool ethos and they have the ethical side that works towards either training their staff with us or finding the right new hires that they're looking for inside the school, because they've been trained by this guy and that guy and they know what they're talking about. Maybe they're not trained in the traditional way, but they have this flexibility and this personality that allows them to problem solve, to just go out and search for problems. Because if there's one thing about education that everyone should first of all give up, I think it's the notion that after you end your training, your education in school, it's done. You don't have to learn anymore. And that's the biggest lie ever.
Yeah, I think that those days are definitely gone. Great. Well, we'll make sure to put your contact information and social media information and all of that as part of this video, and let me know if I can give a webinar. I'd love to help out in any way I can, the students that you have there. Thank you so much for taking a bit of time to talk to me. It was really nice to meet you, and good luck. We're cheering you on from across the ocean there.
Cool. Thank you. Thank you very much.